Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Solo ReacTalk. Tonight, I'm going to be reacting to Doom Faith Humanity, episode 5. Let me just check the name. Terrors in the Dark Deeps, made on the KRissCHu shared YouTube channel. If you guys want to check out my previous reactions to the other episodes, remember the playlist card is going to be at the top here. Just click on it and you'll be able to access them. If you want to check out the original video as well as KRissCHu shared's YouTube channel, the links are going to be in the description below. Yes, episode 4, Ugly Reflections. What happened again? Yes, Private Richard Bobson, he was really advocating for his people. He was trying to rescue a lady that was trapped under rubble, but the other members of his crew, if I can say that, or should I say the people that were under the command of Commissar Katerina Akoni, did not want to support the endeavor that Bobson wanted, to achieve, in saving this lady's life, this lady who was trapped under some rubble. And, I was a bit disappointed when they said that, it's just a civilian, just let her die, let her go to the Empress side. I was with Bobson. I said that, you guys need to save this woman's life. Any life is precious, and giving her this chance to survive is very important. And that's what they did. Eventually Bobson did convince them to save this woman's life. However, to our surprise, this lady was part of a hive gang, and this hive gang was setting up a trap to capture Akoni and her team and the truck that they were in, and to steal their possessions and probably kill them as well. Luckily, Akoni and her team, they were capable soldiers with experience, soldiers with weapons that were just far beyond anything that the hive gangers had, and they completely destroyed them. They killed all of them. And even Bobson, once he found out that this lady that they saved from the rubble was also a part of this group, he took out his gun, he killed her on the spot, he didn't waste time. And he also got to execute 3 more hive gangers who were trying to make excuses, trying to say that it's the only way for them to survive, by killing other people, by stealing other people's possessions. And Bobson did not have any of it. And just like me, I agreed with him that whatever these people are saying is just utter nonsense. They need to go. So yeah, definitely the hive gangers were all killed, and it was the end of that story. Yes, Bobson was a bit disappointed, or should I say he was really disappointed, and so was I. I was also disappointed. And I think we've learned a bit of a lesson there. We can't trust everybody, but I still say that if anyone needs help, we should render assistance. Yes, it can be risky, but it's the right thing to do. I still believe it's the right thing to do. Oh yes, and then we also have a possibility of a Tyranid invasion on this planet, Brotal 4. Or it's the Gene Stealer cult. I'm not entirely sure which is it. If it is the Tyranids, then this story is going to be over pretty quick. If it's the Tyranids, it's over for all of the characters that we love in this story. But if it's the Gene Stealer cult, maybe there's a chance. There's a chance that our guys will all make it out alive, and they'll be able to cleanse Brotal 4 of the Gene Stealer cult influence. But yeah, we'll just have to wait and see what happens. And then with the orcs, well, orcs being orcs doing what orcs do. So yeah, it's just normal politics that happens in orc universe, if I can say that. And yeah, Akoni and her team, especially Gargota and Kost, were testing out their new weapons on some grots. And yeah, the mini revolution that they were having kind of ended on the same day it started. So yeah, it was a bit funny, but that's it with the orcs as well. Let us continue now with episode 5 and see what is going to happen. I'm hoping it's just the Gene Stealer, because if it is the Tyranids, it's over. 3, 2, 1, go.
At long last, the adventure above ground had come to a close. The stress and expenditure of both ammunition and calories from the engagement with the gangers was reason to be a suitable trade-off, since it had saved the squad a few days of driving. 1 mere kilometer in front of them, tucked under the shadows of the spire's superstructures, loomed an opening hatch leading into the underhive. While one would normally have tried looking out and up to catch any possible rays of sunlight, who may have snugged their way this low in the superstructure before diving into the darkness of the depths, this was not the case for the truck's occupants. All of them, save for Richard, who was once more sat in the corner of the vehicle's back and stared at its floor, had their gazes affixed to the front, only slightly lifting them when they drove under the arch of the pipe-like tunnel. They took note of the bottom belonging to the massive silo gate currently sheathed inside the roof of the entrance. Its visage repeated itself several times at regular intervals further down the tunnel, signifying that the depths had ample protection from outside incursions. To Gus's mind, however, came another thought in regards to the use of putting such difficult-to-breach doors, roused from his memories of his regiment's safari outing in the depths of Necromunda.
Safari in Necromunda? Hey, okay.
Do you have a lot of nasty things crawling down in your underhive here on Brodel?
He addressed Bobson with mild mirth in his tone.
If there was no invasion going on, I'd have thought that such heavy seals would be used to keep something from coming out of there, rather than preventing others from entering.
The private's head raised itself along with his eyes as he tried to recall any information on the matter, but lowered themselves to look back at the Catachan as he replied.
Can't really think of anything beyond what I guess you'd normally find in one. Just mutants and gangers and the occasional animal contorted into an aberration by the pollution. From what I've heard, there's just an abundance of vermin down there. One of my squad mates that used to be part of the Arbites before he was discharged from their ranks said that he even saw 2 talking to each other during a cleansing expedition.
His face cringed slightly at the mention of that person.
Though we really didn't like abhumans and would often spout insults towards them, so we just thought he was being an arse towards some destitute ratlings his patrol had come across.
While speaking, his gaze shifted to the windshield, observing their surrounding area. Despite being spared the destruction wrought on the surface, the underhive did not look much more appealing. The walls of the tunnel were plastered with ramshackle habitation units, derelict scrap and pieces of debris littering the streets between them, as well as the road they were driving on. It amazed him that anyone could really live here, as the place looked more run down and inhospitable than even the streets he had roamed above ground.
Yeah, well, the deeper you go in the underhive, the more deplorable it will look.
That better be the case.
Lawrence scoffed, without giving the Brotelian a glance, since his vision was preoccupied with preparing the Voxcaster backpack for use.
Your planet has already used up its quota of aggravating things I can tolerate. I don't want any more surprises out of it for at least a week.
Both of the commandos and the private shared a chuckle at his statement. Seemingly intended to kill their mirth, a familiar scene repeated itself as both of the Voxes gave off an alert of having intercepted some manner of communication. Katerina shut off the one at the desk and signaled for Dusk to patch the message through his device, likely due to wanting to make sure it worked properly, Richard thought. Offering a single nod of acceptance, the Cadian followed the command, and the intercepted message played through clearly for everyone to hear.
We have to make another patrol back to the entrance, just to be safe. If those gangers find our home, we need to make sure that there are more following them. We promise to be extra careful. So, brother, please tell sister to not worry. Even if we are a bit late, we will be back safe and sound. We might even be able to connect to our cousin's frequency if we are closer to the surface. Edric, out.
Bobson looked like he was about to beam up and rise from his seat, but was halted by the Krieger surging up to his feet and pinning him back down from 2 arms' length as he pointed at him and barked.
No! Don't you fucking dare! We are not being nice to renters from the Fox again.
But
Richard tried to protest, intending to voice that these seemed to be normal people who had to fend off gangers, rather than being gangers themselves.
No, Bobson, not this time, man. I think we've pushed our luck with the first attempt. Let's not tempt fate here, okay? Let's not tempt fate.
Only to be silenced by the commissar, who had turned to look at the back of the truck and also pointed at him and barked.
You keep your mouth shut. I commended you for taking responsibility in executing those scum, but my goodwill for that act does not extend to letting you sweet-talk us about every battalion we encounter.
With the young man chastised, Katerina addressed the Mordian.
Halt the vehicle.
Not too sharply, the wheels of the truck went still, the bulk they bore stopping at what Erkoni could estimate was roughly 5 kilometers from their entry point. With everything stable, she further instructed.
We will disembark here and proceed on foot, in order to check on whoever it is that is approaching. Cost, I want you to get the truck in reverse and keep it ready for travel. Should anything sour the expedition, it will be faster for us to board from the open back.
Everyone began standing up and gathering their equipment. As Richard began doing the same, however, he received another shutdown from their commanding officer.
Not you, Private. You will be staying with Cost and guarding the vehicle in case of incursion.
Bobson took a breath in with the intention to protest, but was unable to expel anything of the sort, as the air in his lungs was metaphorically kicked out by the commissar's next statement.
I will hear nothing else from you in this matter. You are on probation for that sentimentality of yours until further notice. And you best thank the throne that I am in such a good mood to let you off so easily, because I shot officers for less.
Defiance washed away like mud under a power wash from the Brotelian's face into a sparklingly clean expression of defeat, following which he raised his hand to salute and uttered,
understood, sir.
A single nod of her head concluded the interaction, prompting her to shift her attention to the Cadian, who was hefting the communication device.
Sergeant, have you calibrated the Vox frequency to be in sync with the truck's receiver?
Affirmative, sir. We are able to speak directly to the driver's cabin on your command.
Good. The rest of you, form up on me and the commanders. We will be proceeding with the stealth for the time being. I do not want these dregs noticing us until they are within command distance.
No further interruptions occurred, as the majority of the squad disembarked and headed further down the road, utilizing the decrepit buildings for concealment, while Cost maneuvered their vehicle as instructed, with Richard covering its rear after opening the doors to the back. Without the near-tireless support of their vehicle, the group were able to get a much better measure for the depth and length of the tunnel, as they skulked for a significant while, yet the distance they covered could not compare with even half of what they had crossed during the drive. It was a mild blessing that the stench of rotting flesh was not present, indicating that there had been no real casualties down here, but its absence was, unfortunately, filled with various other respiratory hazards that were equally interested in ushering forth their rations from their insides.
Interesting that there are no... Well, it seems like there's nobody here. Not just dead bodies, but essentially nobody is here, in this underhive city. Because you would expect there to be millions of people, just roaming around or doing something, or even fighting against each other like hive gangers or something, some sort of activity. But so far we're hearing that there's nothing going on here. It's very quiet. There are no people, there are no dead bodies on the floor, there are no orcs. This is very strange. And we heard people talking on the radio.
Their approach was further inconvenienced by the inconsistent lighting of the area. Had it been properly lit or pitch black, they could have easily adjusted, but to their detriment, the majority of the lumen globes were rapidly flickering as they bathed the tunnel's insides with their glow. Because of this, creeping through the dilapidated hap constructions had proven itself to be more preferable, as the walls offered protection from the seizure-inducing illumination. A short while after they had gone through a couple of curves of the tunnel, Katerina raised her hand with a clenched fist, halting the group's movement when she picked up the sound of voices, in contrast to the noises of liquids dripping and air wheezing among the ruined background. Several clicks followed as everyone confirmed their power packs were properly slotted and readied their weapons, growing still and melding into the darkness. In a couple of minutes, the source of the voices revealed themselves as two heavy figures covered in rugged Hyver clothing, wearing heavy boots, their hands covered by leather gloves, and their heads also wrapped in cloths, with filtration masks sticking out over their mouths. Both carried some scrap-derived autoguns from what could be distinguished given the visibility conditions of the tunnel, with one having a Voxcaster backpack harnessed to its back. The most unusual detail about them, however, was that they were openly walking in the middle of the road and didn't seem to be negatively affected by the flickering lights in any way. Must be underhivers that have adjusted to life with these defects, some of them thought. As the pair neared, they became more audible. Their exact speech remained undeciphered, as they spoke something fairly different from the standardized Brotelian dialect of Low Gothic. But
I like the Tuscan warrior representation of those two people. KRissCHu shared. Yeah, this is funny. This is really funny.
Seemed to likely be banter, since the pair would occasionally share a laugh over the course of the conversation. Whatever their contents, the two underhivers' words ceased when they passed by the inconspicuous buildings and were shouted at.
Halt! Drop your weapons and raise your arms in the air, slowly. If I see any movements I don't like, you will get more holes put through you than the hub walls that surrounds us.
Freezing in their tracks, the two did as commanded, carefully setting down their weapons and lifting their hands.
Now turn around and identify yourselves.
Doing so greeted them with the sight of the guardsmen and commissars' gun barrels, drawing closer as they walked out of the shadows. With the distance between the groups closed, Arconia would at the very least confirm that the two were Brotelian, as their people's red eyes, terrified by the presented weaponry, peeked from behind their wraps.
We are just simple scavengers, sir.
The Hyver without the Vox spoke, his voice being slightly raspy as it exited through his breathing mask.
I am Derek, and this is my brother, Edric.
His sibling hurriedly nodded his head to back up his claim.
What have you been doing so far? While the surface has been smothered by the aliens. Besides, scavenging, of course.
We have been protecting our family,
Edric insisted.
This is our home, our world. Unwanted topside, so we'll sequester ourselves where our existence is permitted, and have been guarding against the invaders from the surface and beyond.
An exasperated sigh, likely accompanied by an eye roll, emanated from under rubber. One single side glance was all the commissar afforded it, before fixing her glare on the Brotelians again.
So you claim to have fought against the gangers of this hive?
Two firm nods were given in response.
Then there may yet be hope for salvation for you and your family. Lead us to them, and I will be the judge of their situation. If you are all able-bodied, you will be conscripted into militia formation, with which to escape from here and away from the greenskins.
The brothers were about to turn their heads to look at each other and lower their hands, but hastily resumed their frozen state as Katerina extended her last pistol forward at them when they attempted the gesture.
This doesn't mean that you are out of suspicion yet, maggots. Your world's population has left much to be desired when it comes to loyalty to the Imperial cause, and I have no intention of taking chances. You will not be making any communication with that Vox, and will walk 10 paces ahead of us, with your hands raised still.
I like how Katerina just keeps calling everybody maggots. No one is safe from that word. Everybody is a maggot to her. Yeah.
Any attempt at insubordination or escape will be put down without hesitation. Do you get me?
More vigorous nodding followed.
Good. Now move.
She waved towards the depths of the tunnel with her weapon, the pair carefully turning to walk in the same direction.
Corporal, confiscate their firearms and cover over 6. The rest of you, keep your eyes peeled on the surroundings and these scavengers. If you spot anything out of order, give one warning. If it is unheeded, you have permission to shoot on sight.
Arconi commanded to the squad out of their captor's earshot. All of them gave a salute of affirmation, at which point they followed, with Ramil picking up the autoguns and walking back to the larger group. The ensuing trek ended up being notably more unpleasant than the initial one, since they now had to walk on the open road under the flickering lights. Due to this, even though the guardsmen only needed to keep their aim on the pair in front of them, the task was rather uncomfortable to perform. Even when not counting the lighting, the atmosphere felt odd to Gus, as he kept looking around, remaining alert of any odd sounds that cropped up while they walked. A truly inappropriate sensation was running down his spine as the group advanced. Despite being stuck in the heart of an urban box, he could not shake off the same feeling he would get when delving into a fiddler den.
So, basically, you guys might be entering into a trap. Maybe. Set by these two guys. Or, yeah, I'm not sure. But I think maybe you guys are really entering into a trap. And I would trust in Gus's instincts on this matter. If he's feeling something, then there's something wrong here. You guys gotta go back to the truck.
While still surveying the terrain, he approached Gargota and asked in a hushed tone,
You, getting this bad vibe, too?
Somewhat, but I'm not exactly sure what for.
She replied in a similar manner. Before the conversation could continue, Steelix raised a hand to pause it, then put it over her eyes and squinted forward as she thought that she had seen something moving inside the midsection of the Voxcaster carrying Brotelian. A couple of heartbeats of focus on his midsection confirmed her initial observation, as she was sure something next to his liver slightly bulged and convulsed inside of his cover.
Ew, what is that? Take off your clothes, let's see.
Hey, Voxman! What do you have under the jacket?
She barked at him, momentarily gathering everyone's attention, and aimed her longlass at the perceived source of movement.
Maybe he's a mutant. Or it could be the Gene Stealer cult, right? Oh gosh. Oof.
Curious about the development, the rest of the squad returned their gaze to the pair, the grips on their weapons tightening.
Nothing. There is nothing. I made that moves.
Edric stammered out.
We have nothing that can harm you on us. We swear.
Derek also spoke up.
We are defenseless without our autoguns.
Regardless of the intention, Katerina's face contorted in a cringe at the remark, as it felt like a direct insult to her intelligence. She would only momentarily glance at the first lieutenant and give her a single nod, following which the Armageddon loosed a lasbolt where she had been aiming, burning through the jacket and side of the scout. He, in turn, let out a howl of pain as he collapsed to his knees and clutched the burn area. Supreme silence choked the life out of the situation for an instant that seemed to stretch out infinitely, with nearly all of the guardsmen's eyes widening at what had come out of the hole on the hiver's side. A third arm, crowned with 3 clawed digits that were clutching a Vox speaker covered in bluish chitin that
Gene Stealer
now bore a bleeding wound from the last bolt's caress. Akin to the gangers from the previous day, a mix of anger and terror washed over the guardsmen, along with the realization of what now stood before them. A realization vocalized by Lorenz and Vermil as everyone was about to fire on the two.
J-Stealers!
Xenomutants!
Edric, warn the brute now!
Derek barked at his brother as he whirled to rush at the off-worlders, his own third clawed arm tearing itself out from his jacket. Powering through the pain, the Vox-bearer lifted at the speaker he had been adjusting during the walk, opening its channel and hastily bellowing into it.
We've been found by 6 Imperials in Tunnel ST7 Sigma, Lazarmed!
Was all he was able to utter before his brother's carapace was burned through by the torrent of blast fire unleashed by the squad, which then found his own, both of their bubbling charred corpses dropping to the ground, and their Vox being shot to pieces as well. Another bout of silence claimed the next few moments, as the fear-stricken guardsmen's minds processed exactly what they had stumbled upon. It would be broken by the commissar uttering,
Run.
Sir?
Ramil confusedly asked. At that point, Arconi turned around and ordered,
I said run! We are retreating! Back to the truck immediately! Dusk, Vox course, and have him drive towards us.
And just imagine, I mean, this entire place, like I said before, this underhive should be having millions of people just roaming around and doing things. But there's no one here. It's silent. That means everyone in this undercity, or in this underhive city, have been converted into the Gene Stealer cult. Meaning, all of these people that live here are going to be chasing after you guys. Yo.
As soon as it had come, fear was banished by adrenaline, with all of them turning around in a sprint back out of the tunnel, with the Cadian attempting to patch through to the Vox. The sergeant called out into the speaker several times, but got no response.
Why are we not hearing them?
The corporal demanded.
I think we're too deep. All the walls and distance between us are blocking the signal.
Just keep trying. We need them to reach us as soon as possible.
Not long after, engines began blaring in the distance, a cacophony of twisted voices muffled among them. Shortly, they were joined by another set of noise, distant las and auto gunfire. The ammunition preceded the vehicles into the guardsmen's periphery as they impacted the road and the surrounding buildings. For a brief couple of seconds, a wrathful shout in the native Brotolian dialect managed to become more audible than everything else.
No, you imbecile!
Before it was followed by the rocketing sound of something self-propelled was set off after them. It easily caught up and dashed past the six, leaving no time to be observed as it impacted into one of the larger HAP block sections on the side of the tunnel. The following explosion ravaged the foundations of the buildings, causing them to begin collapsing towards the road. To their fortune, it seemed that everyone from the squad would be able to make it through before the incoming debris flattened them, save for Katerina, who had been lagging slightly behind the others due to biomechanical differences rather than a lack of spirit and gusto. Noticing this, the Katachan doubled back, scooping her off the ground with one arm, hefting the officer over his shoulder and surged forward, the two narrowly avoiding the last of the falling destruction.
I like this image. I like it. Ooh, and she must be really angry that, Gus is doing this, but hey, he can run fast. So yeah, good. It's good that he picked her up.
Initially mildly irritated, Arconi suppressed her pride at being carried, since her being turned back allowed her the opportunity to fire back at any incoming enemies without compromising her need to continue running. Enemies that made themselves known just as their squad was about to run behind the cover of a turn in the tunnel. The corpse of the collapsed buildings offered one benefit, blocking the road, which prevented whatever vehicles the mutated abominations were using from going forward. Instead, a myriad of Xenos-descended cultists climbed over the debris and began shooting at the group. As the commissar fired back at them, her eyes widened upon seeing it. A true Gene Stealer. The imposing beast leapt off of the building and sprinted down the road on all sixes. Dagger-like claws on its four disgusting arms propelled it forward at ludicrous speed, while its head thrashed and hissed, displaying its razor-toothed maw. A couple of her last pistol's last bolts managed to strike the creature, but they seemingly bounced off harmlessly from the chitin that covered its body. That prompted her to yell over to the quartermaster.
Gruber! Pierce strain on RS6! Kill shot, now!
Wordlessly, the creature jumped and spun in midair, landing on his feet, already aiming down the sights of his hellgun, and loosed a shot at the monster, then turned around and resumed running. The sudden jerk of the motions, however, made a couple of sparks come out of the side of the gun, causing Johann to start fidgeting with it as he ran. His aim was truly something to marvel at, as the last bolt did not veer off, but actually struck the creature. Where any fault could be found was the location of the shot, as it impacted the Gene Stealer's foot in the middle of its leap, rather than its head. Half of the foot was obliterated, which broke the creature's balance, causing it to roll on the ground and pause its sprint for a short while as it bellowed in pain. Sadly, Despite the harshness with which it scraped the pavement, it was still very much alive and well, resuming the chase almost immediately. Before any additional commands could be given, Katerina's aim was thrown off by Gus staggering with a grunt of pain as one of the solid slugs scraped over his side, leaving a bloody gash across it. She would feel the sting of the round as well, nearly crying out, but not out of pain. The cause for it was that as the slug had apparently struck the strap holding her Godwin, as it embedded itself in her thigh, resulting in the holy weapon falling and tumbling down on the ground. Arconia's hand helplessly stretching towards in a plea to grasp it, despite its visage drastically shrinking in the distance. A plea that would not go unanswered, as Ramiel had also seen the weapons fall. Without hesitation or prompt, the Maccabian whirled and ran back, spraying his last bolts at the Gene Stealer, forcing it to briefly cover its eyes, allowing him a couple of precious seconds to discard the autoguns he had been carrying and instead pick up the bolt pistol. As soon as he had it in hand, he tried to rush back to the squad, the occasional shot bouncing off of his carapace. Even with that distraction and its wound, the commissar could clearly see that the monster's still fairly ludicrous speed would catch up to the corporal by the time they all reached the bend of the tunnel.
Shoot it again, Gruber!
I can't, sir. The hell gun is not functioning. If I try to push it any further, it is liable to send us all to the Emperor before that cur gets to us.
Hundreds of curses flashed through Katerina's mind at the situation. She had only moments to consider what can be done in this case, and the only viable decision she could come to aroused hundreds more to emerge as she removed the power pack of her last pistol and handed it down to Wildknife.
Monkey, open up its wiring!
The second lieutenant took the pack with a mix of surprise and annoyance on his face, prompting him to shout out his dissatisfaction.
Oh, sure. When the commissar wants to do it, it's perfectly fine. But when we and the boys try doing it, it's capital offense, punishable by flogging or
One more word from you and this thing will be illuminating the crack of your backside. Now open it and hand it back, maggot.
Do it, maggot.
Sighing and shrugging as he ran, the Catachan took out one of his knives, jamming the point into the top panel of the power pack, using its leverage to pry it open, then returned it as instructed. Immediately she began pulling apart some of the wires inside of the power pack, then crossed them together with others. Just as the squad turned the corner, she completed her grim work, slotting the pack back into the weapon, then pulled and held the trigger, momentarily pressing the last pistol to her forehead, closing her eyes and whispering,
Messiah, forgive me for this sin.
Following which, she opened them and called out to her subordinates.
What is this going to do exactly?
Those of you who still have a functioning weapon, blinding volley into the beast!
Everyone, with the exception of the Catachan and the Krieger, whirled similarly to how the Quartermaster had done earlier and readied their shots. Moments later, Burgundy rushed past their field of fire, ducking to the side when he saw their formation. Just like Arconi had predicted, the Gene Stealer had caught up to him and also turned the corner heartbeats after the Maccabian. As soon as it did so, a volley of last fire showered it, leaving sizzling marks over its carapace as it halted for an instant. That instant was what Katerina had been waiting for. Already nervous by how long she had held the device in her hands, she threw it with relief and purpose at the monster, at which point the group, now fully united, resumed running.
Oh, is it going to be like a grenade? Yeah, like it's overloading. Oh, okay.
When the scorching rain passed, the Gene Stealer lowered its arms just in time to see the last pistol flying towards it. Something, which one might describe as amusement, colored its face as it reached out and effortlessly grabbed the discarded weapon a single inch away from its face.
Now, why would you do that? Why would you? You know what? I think you're gonna die right now. Or maybe your arm will be blown off. Yeah, let's see.
It began to crookedly smile, intending to savor the fear it had infused into its prey, when it noticed a hissing sound coming from the pistol. Before it could give any further thought, the device burst in a shower of plasma, incinerating the pistol and the upper half of the Gene Stealer's torso, while the rest of the beast slumped onto the ground.
Great piss, sir!
You would make an excellent commando.
Spare me your worthless words. Sergeant, what's the ETA of the Dvoks?
Come on, they're not worthless.
The Commissar demanded. Lawrence had resumed his soothing of the apparatus's machine spirit, reciting litanies of life and duty, until a satisfactory sound came through the speaker.
I think we're finally in range. Sir, contact him now.
Back at the truck, the atmosphere was significantly more lax, with the Mordian resting with a firm grip on the wheel, while the Brotelian sat by the open doors of the back of the truck with his lasgun in hand. The latter would spring to his feet while the former sharply turned his head to look at the receiver when Dusk's voice blared out from the Vox at the front.
Cost, we are being pursued by hostiles. Mutants carrying small arms and gene stealers on our 6. We require immediate extraction. We are falling back to your position. Meet us halfway.
The Cadian had not even finished his message when Dan began rousing the vehicle to life. Contrasting him, however, Richard was almost paralyzed from worry at the mention of hostiles.
What? What are gene stealers? And how are we going to get to them quickly enough?
Oh, you don't know what they are? Wow, welcome. Welcome.
This road is so narrow it took us 5 minutes to turn the truck, but whoa!
His shaken tirade was halted when the machine rapidly surged backwards, causing the young man to topple down on its floor. Above his field of view loomed the captain, who was looking over the edge of the front seat and yelled with clear concern and determined wrath in his tone.
Stand up, Sultan, and keep those blasted doors open. I need the view and you to be my spotter for things on the road if we are to push this pile of scrap in reverse. Macarius's blood. How dare the crew of my old Rust be sleeping 2 meters in the ground when I have thrown damn need of them?
Further down, the majority of the squad were beginning to...
Is Cost talking about his comrades in arms who died when the orcs crash landed on Brotal 4? Is he talking about his people? Okay. Or maybe I'm wrong about that, I don't know. But okay. Okay, Cost.
Feel haggard from the nearly unceasing sprint. The only breaks they could experience were the several second-long stops of fire upon their pursuers and the cultists that were somehow crawling out from the buildings on the side of the road, which they had initially presumed to be empty. Without his Helgun operational, Johann took up the role of mobile cover for their right flank, while Ramil had rushed up to do the same for the left, while also firing at any enemies that cropped up, specifically covering the Commissar and her ride. By this point, their running had begun to stall, as they could begin hearing the voices of the heretics closing in.
I wonder how far have the Gene Stealer cults spread, in this hive city? Because clearly they are in control of the Underhive city, but I wonder on the surface, have they also infiltrated into the higher echelons of the government of the city?
Their hearts momentarily sank when they heard the roar of an engine once again. Had the damnable mongrels managed to smuggle their vehicles past the rubble already? Such disquietude would thankfully diminish upon realizing that the sound was approaching from their front instead of their rear. It would almost completely remove itself when they at last saw their truck surge down the road in reverse until it suddenly halted, with its back doors flung open and the private beckoning them forward with a few sweeping motions of his arm.
Hurry, get in!
Bobson yelled, after which he took aim and sent a burst of las bolts over their heads. As far as they could tell by the following noise, his shots had been able to fell at least one of their pursuers. Inspired by their arrival, the 5 pushed their bodies further, squeezing out as much of the precious adrenaline into their systems in order to surge forward for one final burst. So concentrated was their focus that none of them could notice, let alone acknowledge, the abject terror and disgust plastered over Richard's face after he laid eyes on the Gene Stealer's progeny. Steelix and Gruber were the first ones to reach, leaping into the back of the vehicle. As the Krieger began attempting to fix his Helgun, his Armageddon counterpart hefted her long lance and joined the Brotelian in laying down cover fire. When they neared, Wildknife threw Arconi into the vehicle, then proceeded to grab Dusk and repeated the action before jumping on himself. Katerina practically flew through the storage compartment, stopping as she impacted the backrest of the front seat. She gasped for air once before shouting out at her bodyguard.
Cost, get us out of here, this instant!
Shifting gear was the only response given, along with a pedal being embedded into the floor, followed by the tires spinning furiously and setting off, just as Ramil managed to climb on himself. By now, everyone was standing in position, those who still had available firearms firing back at the now visible battalion of mutants that ran after them, while those who did not picked some up from their vehicle supply and joined them as well. When they had made some distance, the Krieger dropped the autogun he had picked up from the floor, took off the Helgun's power pack, and reached into his pocket, pulling out the grenade he had saved from his company's original armament. Yanking the pin off, he stretched his arm back, ready to pitch the toxic explosive out in order to create a deadly concealment for their escape. His intentions, however, would be interrupted as a shrill roar was heard around them, followed by the loud crash of rubble and scrap from the side of the truck. In the next 3 heartbeats, in the middle of Gruber's pitch, something large landed on the backside of their vehicle, its weight causing the vehicle's front to violently bounce up and back down, which floored all of its occupants, their weapons loosed on the ground, and the grenade spinning in the air due to the failed pitch as it was let go of.
Oh no, no. How many seconds do they have before it explodes?
What had just latched onto the steel frame of the machine was another gene stealer. However, this one was bizarrely different, significantly larger than the first one the squad had encountered. Its upper set of arms ended in truly scythe-like claws which had penetrated the metal and clung like chain rings onto it. But its most striking feature was the lengthy beard of barbed tentacles which hung from and covered some of the thing's face, as it currently had them all flared up, revealing its toothy maw in a roar.
I've never seen a gene stealer like that before. Wow, looks like an octopus.
All of them were sprawled on the floor before it, the terror of imminent death lurking in their minds, with Richard clearly ready to bawl his eyes out. Before it could lunge inside and slaughter them, however, the Catachan would impede its desire for carnage. Having steeled himself before anyone else, he pushed down with his arms, forcing his upper body to rise, grabbing the spinning grenade and throwing it at the creature. Just as it was finished roaring, it began clamping down its maw, and the canister landing right in it, its teeth and the barbs of its tentacles piercing it and releasing the concentrated stream of a yellowish gas, which blew off a few of the barbs along with pieces of flesh.
Well done. Oh wow, that's Mr. Wildknife. Oh.
The monstrosity let go of its grip of the truck as its throat had been pumped full of chlorine, which also smothered its vision, resulting in the beast falling down on the ground head first and rolling forward for several meters before halting unconscious. Having landed next to it, the Krieger's canister continued to spew forth its contents, creating a sickly yellow cloud, which covered up this segment of the tunnel and was then slowly pushed deep into it towards the pursuing cultists by the airflow from outside the hive.
Did you kill it? Are we safe?
Bobson mumbled out, his body shivering as he tucked himself into a corner of the vehicle and crossed his hands in the shape of the Aquila over his chest. Gus smirked, apparently ready to provide a witty remark, but it was postponed as loud metallic scraping became audible. Gargota began looking around through the openings, pausing with wide eyes as she looked up and uttered,
We are not out of danger yet.
Upon seeing one of the massive blast doors of the tunnel begin descending to the ground.
Those freaks mean to trap us in that foul lair?
Ramil barked as he noticed it as well.
Not on my watch.
Dan barked as well, further flooring the gas of the truck and slamming his fist over the control panel and shouting,
In the name of the Emperor, I command you to move faster and fulfill your duty, you soft copper imitation of a centaur.
The roar of its tires drastically increased as the machine shot forward like a piece of artillery ordnance. By the throne's mercy, the closing of all of the blast-sealed doors was not instantaneous, but it could not be averted. Each one they passed was getting lower and lower, the latter ones being uncomfortably so, until they were once again face to face with the first door that separated the outside world with the Underhive. It had very nearly reached all the way down, and it was clear to Kost that not coming in contact with it would not be possible, due to which he bellowed at everyone.
Duck and brace for impact.
As he himself lowered himself on the steering wheel as much as possible. No one dared to ignore that command, as all pressed themselves horizontally on the floor, some offering hushed prayers to either the Master of Mankind or the Omnissiah.
Will the truck make it though? I don't know, it might get stuck like at the door. Just as the door or the blast door descends down. Yeah, it might just get stuck on it. Hopefully not, but let's see.
All the while, their window for an exit grew smaller and smaller, despite the velocity being implemented to reach it. Closer and closer, most of the squad mates closed their eyes and prepared for what was clearly to come. Doubly so after their driver's repeated announcement,
"Brace for impact!"
In the next few heartbeats, the machine and the door connected in a contest of raw power, a conflict that their truck was woefully underprepared to handle. The massive door did not budge in the slightest from its path as the vehicle drove under it, the upper half of its roof frame tearing itself off from its chassis due to the impact, barely leaving much of the windshield on or the backside doors, as bits of metal, splinters, and glass rained down on the guardsmen. Everything shook violently as they burst out onto the external roads and surged as far away from the underhive as possible. Quick and heavy breathing prevented them from speaking anything in general. Only a looming sense of dread hung over the now exposed squad as they tried to calm themselves. Taking stock of their situation and planning accordingly for it would happen at a later time when conscious thought could resume its control of their minds.
All of a sudden now they have a convertible truck. A truck with no roof. It's just sunlight and the moon and the stars. That's it now. Oh, they're lucky.
Light kicking and prodding sensations covered Kerr's carapace, lulling its consciousness to surface. The creature's eyes sporadically blinked open as it wheezed out a few puffs of the toxic gas, which was being counteracted by its immune system and was apparently vented away in the time it had taken for it to awake. Pain racked its nervous system. A twice-sourced burning sensation was staring into its torso, one from the lungs, due to some still lingering poison residue, and the other from its abdomen as the Imgarl's metabolism began demanding its due of biomass. Said sensations would get banished from its surface thoughts as a booted foot stomped it a couple of inches away from its face, prompting Kerr's multitude of eyes to stare up until they met the disappointed glare of the brood's primus.
What happened? How many of the Imperial interlopers did you dispose of?
I'm assuming this is the brother.
Abominable cur,
he demanded. Images of the runaway vehicle and its occupants, along with those of the box of poison, accompanied by the sensations of burning and concussion, flooded the Genestealer General's mind through their shared brood link in response. Whilst imparting its experience, the Imgarl rose to its feet, towering over the mutant as it dismissively avoided direct eye contact with him.
What? The Imgarl. So that's what it's called. Okay.
Such failure is a deep blow, even for your defective kind. I am becoming less surprised that the gods refuse your blessed ascension.
Kerr's eyes flared up at the remark, followed by the beast leaning forward and roaring into the Primus's face, while summoning forth the memory of the last moments of the Genestealer that had perished from the human's weapon.
Sacrilege! You dare compare the failure of a broken thing such as yourself to the tragic demise of a perfect one?
How is he a broken thing, though? I mean, he looks like he's far superior. Physically, and with just as many capabilities as other, should I say, pure strain Genestealer.
Flesh bubbled and bones creaked as the clawed hands of the Imgarl each merged into a lengthy bony blade, about to be thrust into the smaller being, who in turn drew his bone sword and intended to do the same. Hostility drowned out their localized section of the broodmind, to the point where the lesser cultists backed away from the pair in fear. Before either of them could make good on their lethal intentions, however, both of their bodies froze in place, as if suspended in stasis, the veins on their heads painfully bulging as something else began invading their minds. Each grunted and coughed from the pressure building up in their skulls for several moments, until whatever held them let go. Both took 2 steps backwards from each other, breathing heavily as they stabilized themselves and shared a mutual glare.
It baffles me. why Father tolerates your kind so. But I suppose you can be useful.
The Primus spoke between breaths as he sheathed his blade and ran a hand over his bald head.
At least he was reasonable enough to dispense punishment.
Kerr shook its head and circled around its position, flailing its arms as their blades morphed back into their clawed state.
It's no use complaining, Kerr. Father has decided. Now go and complete his order. Dispatch of these interlopers and bring back proof of your kills, before they expose our family's existence to someone who must not know of it. Until then, you are banished from joining our broodmind.
It wanted to unleash all of its frustration and irritation at him, but it only ended up thrashing about and roaring aimlessly. That is when it dawned on it, the sensation of emptiness. Anger once more flared into the beast when it saw the Primus smugly grin at it, before turning around and walking back down the tunnel with the other mutants. Rattling its body, Kerr let out one final roar in their direction, before whirling back and leaping onto the blast door's wall.
I'm surprised that this thing is still alive. It's still able to scream and shout after it just swallowed that chlorine gas. Really. I mean, if it was any other human being, they would be dead on the floor. I'm not sure about orcs, but yeah, I mean, even with this gene stealer, like, it's amazing.
Crawled up to one of the vents in it and then into it, continuing its trek until it burst outside of the tunnel, the cold evening air bristling past its tentacled face. The targets it was pointed towards were long gone, and their scent was no longer within its ability to perceive. But it did remember their scent. 2 growls emanated off the Imgarl. One from its maw, signaling its displeasure at the situation, and another from its abdomen, its body once more announcing its craving for flesh and blood. Before anything else could be done, Kerr needed to satiate it, lest it be forced into involuntary hibernation, or lose its fighting capabilities. As it considered how to proceed, one good thing would happen to the beast. Detecting the speech of a particular word in the distance, uttered by many voices. A word whose meaning Kerr had become very familiar with.
Those poor grots are going to be eaten by this thing. Oh gosh.
Dinner. Back in the depths, the Primus and its retinue returned to their brood's lair, an ancient storage hangar that had been abandoned and built over millennia ago, now refurbished as their cult's main base of operations. All around them labored the nearly 500 mutant cultists of varying breeds, the majority being the normal broodkin, with a small contingent of aberrants assisting with moving heavy loads onto the myriad of trucks that rolled out and strode back in from a multitude of other tunnels.
So there's only hundreds of these guys. I expected them to be like millions, or at least hundreds of thousands. But yeah, okay.
Among the imperfect brute's number counted 3 abominants with their mind-worn familiars riding the bulging mutants as they directed them. Best, of course, was the hidden presence of a couple dozen perfect ones which roamed the shadows, observing everything while maintaining their forms hidden. The only thing that revealed them was their minds touching those of the other broodkin through their collective conscience. It all brought a smile to his face. Their brood was strong, despite its relatively small number, resulting from the aliens' incursions into their territory. The Greenskins had thrown a large filthy wrench in their plans, but in the end, their involvement did not matter. From what he had been briefed on, the 2 other cults that were born of this world were even more numerous than their own at the peak of their strength. Surely the gods had heard their prayers and worship and were speeding through the cosmic void to reach them. He didn't know how or why, but he knew that all of their problems would soon conclude.
So the Tyranids are coming to Brotal 4. They are coming. Oh gosh. Oof.
Suddenly, the general mutant's smile faded as his mind noticed something else. The forms of a handful of the deplorable, defective curs skittered through the shadows of his peripheral vision, while their unclean minds rubbed over his surface thoughts. He knew to distrust them from the moment he was born, thanks to their father's teachings. Those unclean freaks were broken, wrong, despite sharing a lineage with his glorious patriarch. Their diseased flesh was insulting to the gods, which is why they had been abandoned and always sought to redeem themselves through service.
What makes them so disgusting to these so-called pure strain Genestealer cult members? What is it? Because to me they look like the purest definition of a tyrannid, you know, in the way they look so monstrous and powerful and capable with their physicality. Unlike these Genestealer cult members who are still kind of humanoid and weak. I mean, they can be killed with proper weapons fire. Unlike Youngral or Kerr, as it's also been called. You know, very difficult to kill, very powerful, very fast. So I'm not entirely sure why are they considered to be disgusting, corrupted creatures.
Laughable. He often wished that they would just throw themselves at the Imperial's lines, so that they would spare his brood the insolence of their being. Alas, while disdainful of them, his father saw fit to at least use them as tools, even if none of them carried a direct familial tie with him. Hence why he had dominated their minds by allowing them to join their brood mind, exploiting their desire for belonging to turn them into additional shock troops.
Brother!
The Primus was pulled out of his thoughts and into the physical reality by a pleasantly familiar voice.
So this is the sister.
His features softened into a welcoming visage as he saw the prime magus of their brood running to him.
Sister,
he softly uttered as he spread his arms, allowing her to embrace him in a familial hug. They lingered for a moment, following which they broke off and continued their trek together.
What happened in the tunnel?
She asked, a mild worry in her tone.
I tried to follow your forces, but after feeling several minds leave our collective, I was frightened.
He, in turn, grew grim, looking down slightly.
You were frightened? Huh. You guys sound very human. You know? I mean, they even have Genestealer internal politics. Internal politics about, those that they hate and those that they love. And now we're seeing the brother and the sister talking in a very human kind of way. It's very interesting. Very interesting.
Before sighing and answering her inquiry.
You saw the Imperial interlopers through Edric and Derek, yes?
After she nodded, he continued.
The cursed corpse worshippers were more competent than we had expected. As we tried chasing them down, they shot 9 of our brothers. And through some trickery, they also slew the perfect one who joined our hunt.
Oh, stars!
The magus shuddered, bringing both of her hands together up to her face, closing her eyes and pressing her forehead to her hands.
Gods, please forgive our brothers' souls for rushing to you before you could meet their flesh. Shepherd them into your embrace and offer them peace.
Not uttering a sound, the Primus mimicked her actions and offered a silent prayer of his own. Once she was finished, she asked in a pleading tone.
Have there been any calls or other types of communication by our cousins?
To her dismay, he shook his head.
We have been attempting to reach them by means both natural and mechanical, but with no success.
They probably were killed by the orcs, or other human forces.
Their minds and voxes remain closed to us still.
After replying, he looked down at her.
And what of the gods? Have you or father been able to hear their voices again?
It was her turn to shake her head to his displeasure.
No. Ever since their silence began several months ago, we have been unable to make any contact with them again. It is as if they are scorning us for some sin.
The Primus huffed.
So you guys cannot have communications with the Tyranids in space? Interesting. Considering that you guys are using, like your, sort of say, like psyche communications with the hive mind. Yeah, I mean, that's really strange. What happened to them? Are they in slumber, or are they lost in deep space, or what? So I guess maybe Brotal 4 won't be invaded by the Tyranids. If this situation continues where the Gene Stealer cult cannot communicate with the hive fleets, then yeah, probably Brotal 4 will avoid that catastrophe. We still have to deal with the Gene Stealer cult as well as the orcs, but at least it's far better. It's far better than to be dealing with the Tyranids. Yeah, interesting.
If I had to bet, it might be due to associating with the Curse.
Brother, do not be so negative of them.
She protested.
You were taught by our father the same as I, sister.
He retorted.
They were rejected by the gods. We should not have mingled with them. Yet he apparently ignores his own teachings in the search of expedience.
That is because there may yet be salvation for them. If they are given a chance to prove themselves, maybe the gods will allow them to ascend as us.
Her words prompted him to sigh, but also smile.
You are too kind for this world, sister. I am proud to know that we are the same blood, for you truly must be a gift from the gods.
As the Primus said so, his clawed hand reached up and gently stroked to the top of her head. Her face flushed with a tinge of violet at the gesture.
This is so weird. They're weird. Oh, Gene Stealer cult members. Oh, gosh.
After a couple of moments, the Magus pulled to the side and pouted.
I'm not a child anymore. You don't have to do that, especially in front of the others. It's embarrassing.
They pay it no heed. In any case, let us be ready to heed Father's words. I hope we don't miss the sermon.
Her pout changed into a soft smile as she nodded, and their group proceeded without any further interruptions. Their walk would conclude in one of the most spacious halls of the lair. Several dozen broodkin had gathered and kneeled at the bank in front of a deep pool of oozing liquid. Seated on a large pipe, as if on a pedestal, before them towered their father. Radiant and resplendent, the patriarch was nearly motionless as it drew in the minds of the newly arrived into its sermon, prompting them to assume the same position as the rest of those present. Complex emotions and patterns were transcribed to them in the plane of their thoughts, uplifting their spirits, while also issuing edicts on how the defense and development of their brood would progress after its notable decline in recent times. Being able to communicate with him so directly was nearly as magnificent as hearing the voices of the gods themselves. Within the comfort of their holy place, the silence of the gathering being only interrupted with the flow of their patriarch's pool, the scene was nothing short of true blissful serenity. Alas, this peace was not fated to last. Suddenly, the brood mind was afflicted by an intense psychic backlash. The Genestealer Patriarch bellowed and screeched as it rose from its seat, all the while the rest of its congregation momentarily collapsed on the ground, screaming in pain. First to regain a hold of themselves will be the Primus. Looking round his squirming brethren, he focused on the form of their Magus as he lunged over to her and cradled her in his arms.
Sister, speak. What just happened?
Guard and Shana and their squads are gone. They all simultaneously perished.
While speaking, tears welled up and spilled out of her eyes.
What is going on here? I know definitely it's not Katerina and her forces who are doing this. So now we have a potential fourth force entering into this Brotal 4 situation. You know, we have the orcs, we have the Genestealer cult, we have Hive Gangers, and now there's someone else. Who's the fourth contender for Brutal 4? Hey. Using Psyker blocking techniques. Huh. I'm trying to figure out who could it be. Yeah, I'm not sure.
That should not be possible,
he exclaimed in disbelief.
70 Broodkin can't just vanish in an instant.
As much as he wanted to deny it, he could not think of any other reason as to why the death of mere Broodkin would cause such a backlash, other than their demise being so swift that it left a metaphorical vacuum that suddenly tugged on the rest of the broodmind to fill it.
Maybe it's the Elder. You know, they are known for their proficiency and their ability to, kill the target quick and fast without them even knowing that they've been killed. Or maybe it's the Drukhari, or it's Astartes. Yes, maybe there's some Astartes on Brutal 4 now. Or it could be Chaos Marines.
It was slower than he would have preferred, but everyone gathered began returning to their senses and getting up. No relief could be had as the thunder of gunfire became audible in the outside chamber. Someone actually dared to assault its home. The very thought of any being having the nerve to do so filled the Patriarch with wrath at being disrespected like that. A blood-curdling roar escaped its throat, issuing forth a psychic stimulus to its congregation, who quickly rose up, picking up their arms, and began to surge out of the hall, with the enormous Genestealer following close behind them. Upon entering the next space, the first detail that would come to their attention was that any form of illumination was disabled, resulting in whatever scuffle was happening to take place in utter darkness. How laughably simple, the Patriarch's thought washed through the broodmind, given how his children were more than adapted to pierce the umbral veil with their sight. So this did not really pose an impediment to their fighting ability. Any mirth brought on by it would be dashed away as something else wormed its way into their link. Screams of pain. Not wasting any more time, the behemoth sent out commands to its offspring, who began spreading out, searching for the assailants and opening fire to whatever they found. One of the abominants had apparently managed to bring one to the ground with a strike of its maul, so the Patriarch rushed in that direction as it wanted to confirm firsthand the enemy in question, the Magus and Primus following after it with a handful of their broodkin. Whoever it was, this enemy mildly puzzled the giant Genestealer. It must have been some special type of greenskins, it reasoned, as it could not think of anything that could take a strike from an abominant and still be left alive for a second one. Just as they were about to reach said location, the grotesque mutant's consciousness was erased from their collective before it could finish off its victim. Surprise quickly shifted into shock when the beast spotted something bright in the corner of its eye. Multiple fiery rays followed by a hissing choom sound burst through a couple of squads of broodkin and several aberrants, causing their flesh to violently explode before turning to ash, invisible in the darkness.
Whoa, what type of weaponry system is that? Is that like a bolter? A bolter gun or... No, but something that goes whoosh. Okay, I'm not entirely sure. Maybe it could be some high-powered las gun, but... okay.
Their brief illumination momentarily revealed the shapes of large beings, matching the abominants in size, who held the massive steaming weapons that likely produced the rays and maliciously glared at the Genestealers with glowing blood-red eyes. Infuriated, the Patriarch shot a claw forward, the Magus following its example as both of them unleashed a psionic blast towards the enemies. Before their psychic assault could reach them, however, something incredibly heavy fell from the ceiling and landed in their path, the two blasts vanishing, as if swept away harmlessly when they came within a couple of arms' length from the object. Immediately after, the gargantuan monster squealed, bringing one pair of hands to squeeze its head over its eyes, while the other were extended forward to block the image of the thing further. The exact same thing occurred with the Magus herself, while the rest of the broodkin howled in pain. The Primus could feel it as well. Whatever that thing was, it affected their broodmind, distorting it and ripping it away. Getting a hold of himself, he pulled out his needler pistol and fired in the direction of the assailants as he barked.
These opponents they're fighting are big, like the Gene Stealer, and they're having psyker abilities. They have very powerful weapons. Okay, definitely they're not Eldar, because Eldar are not that huge physically. It can't be the Orcs. They're not loud enough. And they're using darkness as their ally, or should I say, they switched off the lights or turned off any form of light source. So it can't be the Orcs. The Orcs are very loud people. They want to know, they want their enemy to know that they're there and they're here to have a party with them. So it can't be the Orcs. So yeah, it can be Astartes, maybe Librarians, or it could be Chaos. Yeah.
Stand firm, form up around father. Do not let harm come to him.
Then picked up the magus and called out to her.
Sister, what is happening?
I don't know.
She grunted in pain.
I cannot look upon that. It is an ugly, sickening void. A blackness darker than the dominating shade of our gods. It is murdering our link. It must die.
Her sentiment was shared through their sapping broodmind, amplified by the patriarch who had recovered from the initial exposure and surged forward towards the unknown object. Glaring as he processed the situation, the Primus grabbed one of his soldiers and shoved their sister in his arms, ordering,
"Flee and find safety."
With a nod, the Broodkin followed the instruction and began extraction. Not having to worry about her safety, he too lunged towards the fray. That is when a very uncomfortable fact revealed itself. The object in question was no object at all, as it had stood up and turned around to reveal yet another pair of hateful red eyes. Another salvo of rays issued forth, boiling the assault's numbers, but their father was able to nimbly leap over it, landing on top of one of the mysterious beings and ripping off its head, before vaulting off of the corpse to avoid the follow-up attack of its brood. If their patriarch would ravage the backline, the mutant general would take care of the sinister being that had initially disrupted them.
All Broodkin, disengage and converge on our position. Form around father and protect him with your life. No harm must come to him.
He shouted out, trying to spread the message through the broodmind. While doing so, he once more fired his needler towards the sickening target, while his bone sword glistened with the baleful light of their unity, and he swung it upwards with two hands hefting it, intending to diagonally split the creature, whose fingers ignited with lightning and swung back for a parry. A smile came to the Primus, for he knew that the energy of their brood was stronger than the measly power fields used by the lesser beings, so he made no alteration to his course, intending to cleave through the weapon before reaching the enemy behind it. In the span of the next few heartbeats, however, a couple of realizations would strike at his mind. Firstly, he noted that his shots harmlessly bounced off of the armor of the being. After that, a sudden feeling of emptiness washed over him. He was alone, unable to sense any of his kin save for his blade, which was directly connected to him.
This is terrifying. Even I'm getting scared for the Gene Stealer. I mean, who are these people? Clearly they are Astartes, okay? But now, are they Chaos Marines or are they just Marines? And what is going on here? How are they so precise and so, lightning fast in their in their activity in killing all of these Gene Stealer cult members? Wow, they're terrifying.
Next came the previously tuned out sounds of the battlefield. Thunder, hissing, blast fire, roars, and above all, screams. So many screams had begun echoing within the air. All of them family. He could not feel their pain, so he could only imagine what was being done to them in the shadows to make them vocalize so ferociously. Once again, the exception to this was his blade. The lethal organism that had bonded with him for all of his life screeched, giving off the sensation of being burned, crushed, and torn all at the same time through their direct link, until finally, With one last choked scream, its mind burst and ceased to be. At that moment he could see the energy of their brood mind vanish from the surface of his sword, and above it, the incoming strike of lightning. Unable to change his course, the crackling claws sizzled as they rend through the chitin of his blade like parting water, then sliding through his own flesh, dismembering his head and upper torso with similar ease. As the smoldering and leaking remains of his corpse tumbled to the ground, the Patriarch would drop the enemy it had impaled with its claws. Seeing the death of its general drove it out of its frenzy in an attempt to connect to the rest of the brood, so that it could summon them to its aid. At that point, it wheezed and once more clutched its head for a moment, as its own mind was drowned in the pain and suffering of his children, who called out to their father for salvation, while being put down in ever more grisly manners by the attackers. A couple to a couple dozen, the broodkin were being gruesomely snuffed out. The sheer quantity of carnage being dealt to them forced the Genestealer to shut itself away from the brood mind as another sensation crept up its spine. A sensation that was unfamiliar, unknown and unusual for it to experience. It had only ever expected for it to manifest when it needed to evade the control of the greater hive mind. Yet, these things had roused it to surface in such a short span of time. Fear. Another unusual thing clutched its attention, bringing it out from its distracted state. Laughter. Slowly, it turned its head to the side, finally noticing that the rest of its enemies had stopped trying to shoot it. The hideous noise in question was emanating from the disgusting void, which was painful to look upon. Once aware that it had its attention, the black tear in existence spoke at it.
Ah, so it is indeed possible for you to feel it. Good. That is very good news.
No tremor, no accelerated heartbeat, nothing. The void spoke evenly, almost amusedly, despite the fact that the Patriarch had mangled and slaughtered 4 of its kin. It felt the exact same calm and glee coming from the rest of these creatures, these monsters. If it had the glands for it, sweat would have broken over the behemoth's skin.
Come on then.
The void stepped forward, opening what it believed were its arms in a challenge.
Or have you decided to surrender?
Which legion do you belong to? Or are you Chaos? Wow. Oh, wow.
Adrenaline began flooding its system, temporarily taking it out of its frozen state. Another ravenous roar escaped its maw as a wave of eldritch force stormed forward. The 2 assailants furthest away from the void were flung back for several feet, but those close and behind it, along with the void itself, did not budge at all. Its eyes went wide, the adrenaline in its system being rerouted for a different purpose as the giant beast turned around and began to sprint madly, the sound of more ominous laughs echoing behind it.
So it's running away? Yeah.
During its run, it once more opened itself to the brood mind in an attempt to call for aid, powering through the torrent of suffering that now comprised the link. The first mind it was able to connect to was that of the Kellermorph. Through its senses, it could perceive that the inspiring mutant had successfully snuck away and perched itself on the darkened rafters, weapons at the ready to begin picking off targets. Before any could come into its field of view, however, something thundered and pierced itself through his carapace and in his back, before detonating, the explosion bisecting the mutant. It winced as it vaulted over several parked vehicles and continued to run among the maze of tunnels that comprised the lair.
Where is the Magus, the sister? You know, we've heard now that the brother's dead, but now what about the sister?
Its next connection was to an abominant. The brute was lying chest down on the ground, looking at its skittering mindworm familiar. As the diminutive biopsychic construct ran from side to side, it got splattered on the ground as a less bulky monster, but still clearly identifiable as the same breed as the ones the Patriarch had slain and fled from, stomped it into the ground. Its malignant eyes then turned to the downed abominant, and it walked up to the large mutant. looming over and glaring down at it, the bony metallic horror lifted its foot and crushed its head, pushing its fodder out of its mind.
You will fear the angels of death, definitely.
At that point, it would begin hearing the voice of the void once more.
I've always found it amusing how your kind strives to attain perfection, failing to understand that perfection has already been crafted by a decaying failure of a tyrant, true, but one can't deny that his work is perfection.
Okay, so you definitely are traitor Marines. Alright.
And perfection is now coming for you.
It whizzed its head from side to side, trying to confirm a visual of the voice's origin, but found nothing but the corpses of its kin littering the ground. Suddenly, it halted at an intersection of tunnels. One of the directions revealed itself to be a drop into a cistern chamber of some kind. Looking down into it, the Patriarch would see a pack of its gene stealers, both of its kind and of Imgarl's, or at the very least what was left of them. It could count at least a dozen of their bodies on the ground, along with 3 torn-up remains of the less bulky monsters. Normally, that side would have soothed it, had there not been 5 other monsters still on their feet. 2 were holding down one living of his like, while a third, kneeling on its back, took out a jagged, sharp knife and began to peel away the skin off of its face. Another was going around crushing the heads of the rest of the pack, ensuring they were dead, while the last one, who had finished dismembering the last living Imgarl, picked the beast up by its tentacles and tore it in half through its face. The sight nearly made the Patriarch scream and reveal its position, but it resisted the urge and instead chose to run down the tunnel opposite of the cistern.
Ready or not, here I come. You can't hide. I'm gonna find you and kill you slowly.
Did not know how long it had been running when it felt another mind, the Magus. Sharply angling its tail, the behemoth smashed through the tunnel's wall into another section of the lair, and finally beheld the one it was searching for. Her head clutched in the clawed hand of the void, while her body squirmed in its grasp. How?
This is a good image. This is a really good image. I like this. Yeah, this is nice. KRissCHu said, yeah, this is good. I like how you can actually see it. And then you see the sister going, oh! That is scary.
How? It bellowed in its mind. How did they get here before me? What made the situation even stranger was that it could no longer sense the Magus within the broodmind. She was there, barely a dozen meters away from it, yet her significant presence was nowhere to be found. It was void. Despite that, it could still hear her. Tears streamed out of her eyes and screams tore themselves out of her lungs as the rest of her body writhed in obvious pain.
Do these traitor Marines have like a blank on their side? Because maybe it's like a blank that's preventing the hive mind communication to occur between all of these Gene Stealer cult members. Yeah, there might be like a blank here who is just blocking that frequency. Or should I say the warp and anything that is warp related.
Father, save me! I beg of you!
Shh. Now. Don't be so unsightly.
The void chuckled as it ran a claw on the side of her cheek.
What would your gods say if they saw you now?
Both broodkin stared in befuddlement at it.
Oh, right. They probably wouldn't say anything, considering that we killed them.
What?
The Magus bellowed.
You guys killed a hive fleet? How? Who are you guys? We need your services. We need to hire you guys. If you guys are so effective in killing hive fleets, oh, definitely we need your service. I know you hate the skeleton, god on the throne. I know, but we need to hire your services. We need people like you. Whew.
Followed while her patriarch roared in disbelief.
You lie! That is not possible! They are immortal and invincible!
Yet kill them we did. Why the wrath on your features? You should rejoice. You can be at peace knowing that your feeble beasts of worship didn't abandon you all those months ago. We just needed to be sure that they wouldn't interfere with our hunt. After all, this planet is not yours to conquer. Though I suppose we owe them some thanks. Without encountering them, we wouldn't have found out about all of you.
The Gene Stealer took a step back. All of the fervor that had been built up by the notion of the hive mind's emissary's death vanished as self-preservation began to take hold.
That's right. All of you. The other cults fared little better than yours did.
So it was you guys who killed the other cousins. Okay, I thought it was the orcs. Huh. Very efficient. We do need your services. I'm sure there's some way we can reach an agreement, where you guys would offer your services to protect humanity from the Gene Stealer cults and as well as from the Tyranids. Guys, I know it's impossible. I know. I'm impressed. I'm really, really impressed. Wow.
But alas, they are gone now, just like you will be.
After those words, the Magus's twitching stopped, her screams transforming into whimpering sobs as she let her hands dangle loose.
What?
It was the first time that the large beast saw anything other than malignant glee coming from any of these monsters. The void had to be the last it expected to show negativity as it lightly dangled the brood's daughter.
Have you truly broken from just words, abomination?
It questioned with mild irritation in its tone. When it got no response beyond the sobs, the void sighed and muttered with obvious disappointment.
A pity. She would have made for a fun plaything.
Following which, it crushed her head to paste in its hand, then dropped her body to the floor, all the while not breaking eye contact from the patriarch. With her demise, it was finally able to realize something. All of the pain and screaming within the broodmind had stopped. It was empty. It was alone. A few tense moments followed, broken only as the void's claws sparked to life with lightning. It raised one hand towards the Gene Stealer, moving one claw back and forth in a beckoning motion. With a final shriek, the beast instead turned around and continued to run down the tunnel.
Ha! This is so funny and embarrassing. Wow.
Its course would continue for what felt like an eternity, as practically all of its psychic potential had left it, and fear dominated its mind, until it finally came out into a closed-off hangar section, which had one single light illuminating a section of the wall. The Patriarch rushed to and collided with the wall, denting its metal but not being able to go through. It tried to claw at it, but it would not tear as quickly as it would like. Before any viable progress could be made, it began to hear heavy metallic footsteps echo all around it. Instantly, it turned around, pressing its back to the wall, remaining within the confines of the light, surrounded by the dark.
Guys, I'm really enjoying this. I love this. I love the fact that the Gene Stealer is terrified for its life. You know, I love it that it's so desperate. It wants to run away, but there's no place to go. Oh, this is good. Oh, I'm enjoying this episode.
Its breathing was heavy, its eyes darting within the pitch black, picking up more and more red glares focusing on it, until the all-too-familiar voice returned to its ears.
I know that you are no mere over-glorified thumb of your hive mind. I know that within that bulbous dome of yours hide the thoughts of an individual, a personality.
Blood surged through its body, its veins bulging as terror slowly overtook it. For a brief moment it looked down at its claw, considering ending its own existence, but its instinct for self-preservation made it hesitate for a moment too long.
It is such a rare treat to get to play with one of your kind. I promise to make our coming time together unforgettably eventful.
Special thanks to all these gits that help make this possible. Remember to like and subscribe and check him out in the description below. Hope you enjoyed this here story and we's looking to see you back next time. Can I go now, Yumi?
No.
Oh.
It's no use complaining, Kerr. Father has decided. Now go and complete his order. He wants 2 cheeseburgers with no pickles and a large thing of fries. Do not forget his Pepsi, or you will be banished forever.
Jubilee, is it that Filipino franchise, right? Jubilee. Yeah, I think it's the one. Wow, guys, oh yeah, this was a nice episode. This was a very, very nice episode. Yeah, that was Doom Faith Humanity episode 5. The title again, Terrors in the Dark Deeps. Yeah. Oh, what an amazing episode. What an amazing episode. First we're dealing with Katrina and her, Katerina, sorry, not Katrina. Katerina and her forces, as they found out that, this hive city, or the underhive is infestated with Gene Stealer cult members, and, they were running away from the Gene Stealer cult. They fought against a pure strain Gene Stealer and also a Yumgrol Gene Stealer, and yeah, they survived through that ordeal. The truck has become a convertible truck. The roof has been ripped off as they were trying to escape. So yeah, they're lucky. They got out. All of them alive. All of them are safe. But clearly, they're not going to be able to go through this hive city because it's filled with a lot of danger, especially with Gene Stealer cult. However, when you think that okay, it's over. We're still going to continue on with Katerina and her forces as they discuss on what to do next. No, we're not going with them. We're staying with the Gene Stealer cult, and then we got to experience or should I say, got to understand the politics of the Gene Stealer cult. With the father, the brother, the sister, and all other members of the Gene Stealer cult, and those that are considered to be aberrant, corrupted strains of the pure Gene Stealer cult, and the internal politics that's going around in this family. So yeah, that was also quite interesting to hear about. And then, like out of nowhere, surprise, surprise, these Chaos Marines came in and started killing all of these Genestealer cult members. And, it happened so flawlessly, so precise, so quick that, the higher echelons of the Genestealer cult could not comprehend what is going on, because their brothers and sisters were just dying with such speed and efficiency that, their what do they call it again? The psychic links, the hive mind link could not comprehend what was going on, and they had a feedback loop that hit them, and many of them went to the floor unconscious. Others woke up faster and realized that there's something going on here. And even the Primarch, or the Patriarch I should say, of the Genestealer cult was concerned, was also frustrated and irritated to know that there's someone with the audacity to come into his lair and mess up his operations and kill his tools. And the Patriarch decided that, I'm going to face this enemy up front personally, and yeah, that was a mistake. That was a mistake. But it's not like this Patriarch would have survived anyway if he contained himself in a small room and with a lot of his followers protecting him. It was just not going to help. So yeah, these Chaos Marines were really just terrifying, efficient with their assassination, or should I say killing, of all of these Genestealer cult members. The brother died a very brutal death. I'm not really sad about that. I want these people to die. They're just too dangerous. Genestealer cult members are too dangerous. They call the hive fleets over to a planet, so we can't afford that kind of stuff. So yeah, I was happy that they were dying out. And it was extremely funny hearing about this Patriarch started running away from the danger because it couldn't understand what was going on. Like, all of its pawns or puppets were just dying left, right, and center, and it could not understand what was going on. So yeah, that was a bit funny. That was actually really funny, not just a bit. It was really funny. And it started to search for survivors from this ordeal, and it found a few, but the moment it found them, they got killed. So it was really, really funny. And then the last one to survive, or to be killed, I should say, is the Magus, the sister. She was, being held by the head, by the Astartes, Chaos Astartes, and yeah, it was just terrifying. Really, it was terrifying. And of course, the Genestealer cult leader, the Patriarch, went into survival mode, self-preservation, and started running around the entire facility looking for a way to get out, clawing at the walls, trying to break it open so that he could escape. Nothing. It didn't help. The Astartes were just walking slowly towards their target and, talking, and really, it was amazing. It was amazing. I wish we could hire them to deal with the Tyranids. Really. Oh, this was amazing. This was really, really amazing. Yeah, it was cool. Episode 5, I like it. I really like it. KRissCHu said, yeah, thank you very much. Episode 5 was excellent. Excellent. Guys, that is it for tonight with Doomfaith Humanity. Remember, if you want to check out the original video as well as KRissCHu Said's YouTube channel, the links are going to be in the description below. If you like my reaction, please give me a like, comment, and subscribe to my channel. Click on the notification bell if you want to be up to date with my latest videos. And yeah, I can't wait for next week, episode 6. I need to watch it. I need to see what's going to happen next with this Patriarch as well as with those Chaos Marines. Yeah, I can't wait. Oh, Brotal 4 has become an attractive place, for the orcs, the Genestealer cult, Chaos Marines. Really, it's just a magnet of activity. Yeah. Can't wait. Guys, good night.